Notre Dame has had plenty of great teams over the years, but this era feels different. And today, we're taking a trip down memory lane with the longest-tenured insider on the beat, Tim Prister, to hear why this chapter of Irish football feels different from the rest, and to revisit some unforgettable stories from over 4 decades of covering the program. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. Today is Thursday, August 7th, and thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube or follow the podcast wherever you may be listening. And don't forget, the Friday mailbag is coming up. So if you have got a question, drop it in the YouTube comments below or send it my way on X at Locked On Irish, or shoot me a DM on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. Notre Dame is right in the thick of fall camp right now, and the team actually opened up a few periods to the media on Wednesday. I'll break down the latest updates from that and more on tomorrow's mailbag episode, but today I'm bringing you part 2 of my conversation with the owner and publisher of Irish Illustrated, Tim Prister. If you missed part 1, we talked all about the 2025 Notre Dame team and the state of the program heading into this season. We're both really optimistic about where things stand right now, so definitely check that out after this episode if you have not already. Part 2 is all about the past. We look back on Tim's 44 years covering Notre Dame football, and he shares some incredible stories, including what really happened during the George O'Leary scandal, why Charlie Weis' tenure unraveled, and what makes this current chapter of Notre Dame football stand out from other great eras. Plus, he opens up about the moments that reminded him just how truly special this place really is. Enjoy. Okay, I want to shift gears to part 2 and dive into some of your favorite stories and memories from over the years. But first, I'll ask you a question that is relevant to the present day. Like, you've covered title teams, letdowns, rebuilds, and now a big playoff run in the modern era. So what makes this chapter of Notre Dame football unique compared to all the others that you've seen?
I've said it. Marcus Freeman is universally loved. Now, if he loses to Purdue, he will no longer be universally loved. And
Purdue would be bad.
Yeah.
Purdue would be bad.
I was trying to think of an equivalent to Northern Illinois last year, and
I know it's sad that's true now. Purdue
they don't have
off,
MAC schools on the schedule. It's all Power 4, I guess, except for Navy and Boise. Right? Yeah, Navy and Boise was in the playoffs last year. Navy is a rival, and always, believe it or not, Notre Dame still says it today. One of the most physical teams on their schedule every year. I know that doesn't seemingly make sense because usually the Navy guys are smaller. But, that's true. Anyway, Marcus Freeman, look, you win 13 games in a row. You beat Georgia. You beat Penn State in the playoffs. You play for the national title. You're going to endear yourself to the Notre Dame fans. And then he just has such a great way about him. But again, if you lose to a Toledo-like team or a very bad Stanford team at home, the home losses will no longer be accepted. And he's lost a few of those at this stage. So those will no longer be allowed, according to fans. But Marcus Freeman, he just gets it. And all the credit in the world to his parents, upbringing, influence of Jim Tressel, influences of the coaches along the way, Luke Fickell, what have you. But Marcus Freeman just has a way of reaching all constituencies that is really, really difficult to imagine. I didn't imagine that he could do that. You have to keep winning, but that ability to make everybody like you. How in the world do you do that? I coached high school baseball for 9 years at my alma mater here locally in Mishawaka-Marion, and we won. We played in 2 state championship games. We won regionals and semi-states, and a lot of people didn't like me. Everybody likes Marcus Freeman.
To your point about the home games, he actually has a losing record in home openers with the loss to Marshall and Northern Illinois last year. He has the one win against Tennessee State. So hopefully he can get back to 500 this year, but it's not going to be easy with Texas A&M coming to town. Okay, I feel like this question is very prevalent during talking season, which is almost over, thank God. But what is the most surprising season that you have covered at Notre Dame, good or bad? Just one that completely defied your preseason expectations.
I'm probably going to go off a little. I'm going to go a little off script from what you're asking. But when you start to ask that question, the first one I thought about was the 93 team. Now, the 92 team was great by the end of the year. I thought Notre Dame was capable of playing for the national title. I thought they were one of the best teams in the country at the end of 92. They stumbled early, so they didn't get that opportunity. They lost a ton of talent. They lost, Jerome Bettis, Tommy Carter. They had early departures from the program. So going into 93, we knew that I knew they were very talented, but they were going to have to count on Ron Paulus as the quarterback, the true freshman quarterback. And he suffered a catastrophic. I mean, I remember the day getting together with Lou Holtz when, right after the injury, he looked like he had suffered the injury himself. So they start Kevin McDougal, and there was a reason why Lou Holtz wanted to start, Ron Paulus, because he didn't think Kevin McDougal could handle it, and he did, and he could, and he did, and he was absolutely tremendous, and he ran like they didn't think he could run. So that's the first one that comes to mind, is really because they should have played for the national title. They should have beaten Boston College and completed the undefeated regular season. They probably should have gotten the rematch against Florida State, despite the loss to Boston College. That's the first one that comes to mind. I guess, I'd look back at 88, whereas, like they're going to win the national title. I don't think any of us thought they were going to do that. They got hammered in the 87 season bowl game against Texas A&M. I guess maybe we shouldn't have been surprised, because Lou Holtz, that's what Lou Holtz did, was he turned average teams into good teams and good teams into great teams, whether it was at Notre Dame or Minnesota or Arkansas or wherever he had his stops. Not at South Carolina. He was unable to do that. But after that, you had a lot of, after Holtz, you had a lot of underachieving. Nobody could string anything together. Bob Davie couldn't have two successful seasons in a row. Tyrone Willingham had a really good first season, a bad offense and a great defense, and then it all fell apart. Charlie Weis had 2 seasons and then a absolutely dreadful season in 2007, and it never got any better. Brian Kelly, again, playing for a national title in year 3 after losing 10 games the first 2 years. I'm not sure that you expected that. But when you ask me that, maybe it's because, the Holtz years are so near and dear. The first one that came to mind was, man, they don't have a quarterback. How in the world are they going to win in 93? And they should have played for the national title.
All right, speaking of surprises, I'm guessing the George O'Leary saga was one of the bigger ones that you covered. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I was too young to remember it. But can you just describe the reaction, especially from the national media, when the lies on his resume came to light and he ultimately decided to resign?
Yeah, his opening press conference, fan gathering was in the basketball arena. And, I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to get along with this guy? Because Marcus Freeman's my 7th head coach, I guess 8 if you consider O'Leary, but I never had a one-on-one conversation with George O'Leary because he was done within a few days after he was named the coach. So, I mean, it just seemed surreal. It seemed very surreal. And I never fully understood why they had to fire him, because he had some discrepancies on I don't think that would happen now, Tyler. I just don't.
Yeah. Does Marcus Freeman even have a resume?
I
bet he doesn't. I bet he does not. What would be the point of it? You're not going to see Marcus Freeman on LinkedIn.
You don't. That's a good one. You don't you don't hear the term resume now when it comes to these guys and their profession. I was at the time, and really to a large degree, and I need to talk to Kevin White because I'm working on a bigger project and I haven't been able to nail him down. He was the AD at the time, and it just didn't make sense that was. It makes even less sense today, right? I mean, it just didn't make sense to me at the time that you had to fire him. But I was concerned about my relationship with George O'Leary because he had a reputation of not being great with the media, and I have a reputation of being thin-skinned when it comes to being disrespected by coaches. I had one of those moments with Al Golden, which was pretty funny, that the other guys in the media got a real kick out of it, and Al and I laughed about it later on. But I think George O'Leary and I would have butted heads. So when he wasn't the head coach, I wasn't completely upset about that because I was concerned about what kind of relationship myself and our company would have with him. He was a good coach, though. He was a good coach. I don't think he would have had the peaks and valleys that occurred after that. I think he would he have been a national title coach? I don't know, but I don't think he would have had losing seasons per se at Notre Dame.
Yeah, as we talked about before, he's a big reason why UCF was able to basically build their football program into what it is today.
He's a solid football coach.
We'll be right back with Tim in a moment to hear why the Tyrone Willingham era fell apart and why Notre Dame was not able to hire Urban Meyer to replace him. But first, a word from FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get out on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. Did you know Notre Dame has the 8th best odds to win the national championship according to FanDuel? They're plus 1,300 right now, so it's just something to think about. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So after all that, Notre Dame ends up with Tyrone Willingham, who starts off 8-0 in his first season, but then they lost to Boston College, and things really seemed to unravel from there. So where did it all go wrong for Tyrone Willingham in the years that followed?
I want to say recruiting, and yet if I say that, Charlie Weis had his greatest success with 2 Tyrone Willingham recruits, and Brady Quinn and Jeff Samardzija, and obviously some other guys. But the depth of talent in the recruiting was not good. And, Tyrone was not a big personality. I've always said this, and I always emphasize it again. Tyrone was a football coach for all the right reasons. He wanted to have a positive influence on the players that he coached, and he absolutely did that, and I respect him for that. But he wasn't a big personality, and he wasn't a motivator per se. He had his success by being efficient and by being concise and clear with his team and making his expectations known. I don't know that he was a guy necessarily to tear into teams. That just wasn't his personality. One of the things that I was surprised at, he was never a coordinator before he became head coach at Notre Dame. But I was under the supposition that if Notre Dame had problems offensively, he would be able to coach them out of those problems. And that wasn't true. He was never an offensive coordinator, and I don't think that he had the answers to their problems. Bill Dietrich was his offensive coordinator of choice. Speaking of guys sensitive to criticism from the other side of the fence, from the media, Bill was very much that. And I heard about that face to face. But he was not able to dig them out of their offensive woes. So I love Kent Baer was the defensive coordinator. I liked him personally, and they had a sensational defense the first year in 2002. But they were never really able to get the offense rolling, and I just didn't think that they didn't have the developed talent to have success.
Okay, so once Tyrone Willingham was fired, Notre Dame had a chance to land Urban Meyer, but Meyer chose Florida, and the Irish ended up hiring Charlie Weis away from the Patriots. And for pretty much every single offseason after that, there was some Notre Dame fans on message boards that wanted Notre Dame to give Urban Meyer another go at it and try to hire him, whether he was at Florida or at Ohio State or one of the times that he was retired. But what made that coaching search unique compared to some of the others that you covered?
First, there was the Bob Davie era, and he was not equipped for the magnitude of Notre Dame. Then, Urban Meyer, it was crushing, really, because I had known Urban when he was like 28 or 29 years old as a receivers coach at Notre Dame. Players, very hard on his players. His wide receivers didn't love him. They did not love him. He was very tough on them. But as far as, he made a business decision, and it was disappointing because we knew that Notre Dame was important to him, and he had a great deal of respect for Notre Dame, and he had an introduction to Notre Dame, an indoctrination to Notre Dame as a receivers coach, and I'm not sure that he, perfect fit for Notre Dame, perfect personality fit for Notre Dame. No, but a guy that could have won. I don't think there's any doubt that he would have won. And Notre Dame, he won everywhere he was. He just had that ability to pull teams together, to get them to fear him to a large degree, because he coached with fear. Again, more information than you want to know, but that's kind of how I coached my high school baseball team. Motivation, fundamentals and motivation. That's how we won. But it just wasn't meant to be. He looked at the Florida situation as one where he could more easily have success. He was absolutely right. I couldn't deny that. But I guess, somebody growing up in South Bend and being a Notre Dame fan my whole life, I was hoping that the Notre Dame would tug at his heartstrings, but he went with his gut. And, I think his father had a lot to do with that. Like, let's talk about this, Dad. And they came to the conclusion that Florida was the better place to be in terms of the ability to win and win big. And he was right, because Notre Dame's restrictions now are still in place. They were even more stringent restrictions back in those days. So it was a tough blow. There was no doubt about it. Charlie seemed like the right guy at the time. He said all the right things. I probably had my best personal relationship with Charlie Weis, and you can probably count on one hand how many people in the media would say that, but I did. And it was for two reasons. We were both Notre Dame graduates, and I was a coach, and a high school coach, and he respected that too. So we had a great relationship. But my way or the highway, didn't recruit well enough. Imbalance of offense and defense. You thought that he would, after the first 2 years when the offense was sensational, you thought he would be able to pick up where they left off in 2007. That was an absolutely abysmal football team, especially offensively. He really wasn't the right fit for Notre Dame because he was Charlie Weis and he didn't fit Notre Dame, even though he was a graduate of the place.
Quick follow-up on 2007. Did you have any idea in the preseason that they would be that bad?
No, and I'll tell you why. Well, kind of, but I'll tell you why. After his first 2 years, I was invited to come to his home to sit down and just recap the season and talk about the upcoming season. He was very cordial. He was very kind about that, and we could talk about absolutely anything. And there is a quote out there from those interviews where he had heard some, okay, well, now that you got to play with your guys, what are you going to do? And of course, he took offense to that. And the comment he made to me was, what are we going to do? Go 4-8? And they went 3-9. So that was one that I brought up to him when I interviewed him many years later. He didn't remember saying it, but that's a Charlie Weis kind of comment, that he was supremely confident that they would still be great or very, very good in 2007. And he was wrong by a mile.
So what was the moment when you realized that Charlie Weis was not going to last?
The first game of 2007, which was just a complete blowout loss. And you kind of give everybody a pass. I know most Notre Dame fans don't, because they really didn't like Brian Kelly, but I gave him a pass in 2016 because that could happen. But then by 2008, 2009, when losing, he was 16-21. When losing was part and parcel of his program, he just didn't have solutions. He had bluster and he had confidence and he would say all the right things, but he didn't have the answers. And I don't think he gathered enough talent. And, maybe his personality on the recruiting trail turned some people off. It turned a lot of fans off, and he did not get the talent that he needed to get the job done.
Can you explain what the hell happened during the second half of the 2009 season? That was Weis's last year, and there was so much pressure on that team going into that season because they went 10-15 the previous 2 years. They had a ton of talent on offense with Jimmy Clausen, Golden Tate, Kyle Rudolph as well. They lost a tight game to USC. They had a comeback in that game that fell short. They finished 6-6, capped it off with a loss to UConn on senior day, and then a loss to Stanford where the starting quarterback, Jimmy Clausen, played with a black eye after being punched by a teammate. So that just seems like such a toxic time to be covering the team. What do you remember most about that stretch?
Okay, so now yes, he had gathered enough talent to do it, but it didn't look like it. And that was just the lack of development. The guys that
on offense, he had some guys, but defense, offensive line, not great.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He had gathered those people, but I think that's a reflection. Look, when that happens, that means that your team is not behind you, right? I mean, they don't believe in you. You haven't created the right winning environment, which, as we look to Marcus Freeman and what he created this past year, a huge stark contrast. They don't want the current Notre Dame players. They do not want to disappoint and fail Marcus Freeman. Did the 2019 feel that way? I mean, I think it showed in their play that the collapse of that team, the inability to capitalize on like you said, all the big time skill position players that they had on offense. I think that's always a reflection of how the team, the chemistry of your team, the chemistry of your team with the coaching staff, and how they feel about the environment that they're playing in. When you underachieve like that, the coaching staff is failing in doing their job.
Okay, got a few more questions left, and these are about you. How has the job of covering Notre Dame changed the most since you started? Not just in terms of the media landscape. Like, I know you weren't doing podcasts when you first started covering the team, but in terms of access, relationships to the staff and the players, and fan interaction.
Access and relationships. I went to all, except at the end of the Holtz era, I went to every practice. So, I mean, it was almost impossible not to be on friendly terms with everybody in the organization, each of the coaches. I could stand 50 feet. I could stand on the sideline 50 feet away from Joe Moore coaching offensive linemen. I learned everything there was to know about Joe Moore and everything there was to know about offensive line play. I think, that was my indoctrination as a reporter, learning football by listening to the coaches I could stand near and talk to. When practice was over, you'd walk up to a player or coach, whoever you wanted to talk to, and walk off the field as they would go to, their respective, whether they were housed in the Joyce Center then or the Goog, and you could have those conversations with them. Today, and under Brian Kelly, like under Brian Kelly, we had very little access to the players. Our opportunities to speak to players were very limited. Once the season started, our opportunities to talk to assistant coaches and coordinators was very limited. So in that sense, you lost some of the access. From a work, Tyler, from a work perspective, when I got my start with Blue and Gold Illustrated, we produced 20 newspapers a year. We now work for websites that are open for business 365 days a year. So you never really feel like you're off the clock. I'm not. I'm never really off the clock. I can be off the clock and then within a heartbeat be on the clock again, because you have to tend to it, because your website's open for business every day, 24 hours a day. So you have to deal with that. But, the great thing about Marcus Freeman is, and Katie Lonergan and the people that facilitate these opportunities to talk to players and coaches. We live in a huge social media world now. And so it's important for them to put those people out in front of the media so they can increase and improve their brand. So our ability to connect with the players, not walking off the field with them, but in interview situations that they set up, the coordinators, Marcus Freeman wants his coordinators to meet with the media every week during the season. Just the access to them, and Marcus in the open, we have on the record interviews with Marcus Freeman once a year. We have off the record interviews with him right after that. We just did that with Pete Bavacqua. So there's much greater transparency in today's media world, at least at Notre Dame. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true everywhere else. I'm told that's not true at all at Michigan. And that was always that way. Penn State was always that way. Michigan was always a closed book. Notre Dame had those moments where it was open and then was closed, and now it's open again. So it has changed dramatically. I've gotten a lot older. I'm not sure that I would have the stamina to go to practice every day and then come home and do more work. But it's been a pretty wild ride. I don't know how much longer the ride will be, but I'm happy to be where I am right now going into the 2025 season with what should be an excellent Notre Dame football team that will be available to us throughout the season.
Isn't it ironic that Michigan is the most paranoid team about who can access their program and how much they get to see? I just find that a little bit interesting.
Well, especially under Harbaugh. Harbaugh and Paterno at Penn State. No, you were not getting access to players and coaches on a regular basis. Harbaugh, no, not at all. And of course, Paterno, ruled Penn State with an iron fist. So whatever he wanted is exactly what he got.
Okay, after more than 40 years on the beat, I should say, has there been a moment or moments where it really hit you how special your role is in telling the story of this football program?
Numerous times, certainly on the field at the Fiesta Bowl in Tempe, Arizona, when they won the national title. But again, when you start to say that, Tyler, the first thing that comes to mind is being on the field after the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl wins this past season. Now there was a rogue usher that did everything he possibly could to make sure that we weren't on the field after Notre Dame won the Orange Bowl and was getting ready to go to the national title game. I don't know what that was about, because some ushers were saying, yeah, you can go on the field, media. And this other guy was threatening to arrest me and some other people for being on the field during the Notre Dame's. I'm a beat writer for Notre Dame. They're celebrating on the stage. And this guy was ready to call the authorities.
It was just one guy? Just on a power trip?
As far as I knew, I mean, I think Tim O'Malley can vouch for, there was one guy in particular that he didn't get the memo. Anyway, but despite that, having grown up in South Bend and grown up in that stadium, seeing my first game in Notre Dame Stadium when I was 6, the year they won the national title in '66. I'm an objective reporter. I believe that I've been that my whole life, but I'm still emotionally attached to everything about Notre Dame. And so, those moments on the field after the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl, those are emotional for me. That is, I have a job to do, but I'm also, thinking about growing up as a Notre Dame fan and spending all these years and having the blessing from God to be able to do what I do. I've had a lot of those moments, Tyler. There's been other moments when it takes me 30 hours to get home from the Orange Bowl, as it did this past year because of ice storms and stuff like that, that it wears on you. But I've had a ton of those moments, and the most recent ones were absolutely the Sugar Bowl and Orange Bowl, because I'm generally a pretty emotional guy, and I usually succumb to emotions in situations like that.
Okay, 2 more questions left. And on that topic of emotions, what is the most emotionally charged game that you have covered where the atmosphere, the stakes, and just the outcome all collided?
First thing that comes to mind, 1989 in the Orange Bowl against Miami. Not the Orange Bowl game, but the Orange Bowl facility. The most violent, awful place I've ever been for a football game. I said that to somebody recently, and they said, what about Ohio State? I said Ohio State was second in the mid-90s. I didn't get that feel when Notre Dame was there a couple years ago, but definitely in the mid-90s when Notre Dame had a home and home with Ohio State. But Miami in 89, there was a violent feel to that stadium. They wanted harm to come upon Notre Dame, not just the players, but the fans as well. There were a lot of fans that reported just things that were said to them in the stands or in the bathroom or wherever. But you could feel it. You could cut it with a knife, the violent emotions that were in it. Look, Notre Dame was on a 23-game winning streak. They had beaten at Notre Dame the year before. Controversial fumble call, so they felt like they got cheated, etc. Nothing comes close to 1989 Notre Dame at Miami.
And for that reason, I will not be in attendance for the Notre Dame-Miami game at the start of this season. But the last question I have for you, you have had a front row seat to so many years, different eras of Notre Dame football. When you think about what makes this place and this program so special, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, everything that Notre Dame says they are. They're real. It's an actual real institution that believes in student athletes playing football for them, and they won't give that up. Now, things are not as stringent as they used to be. We used to always talk about the admissions department. Well, the admissions department won't let people in. We never talk about the admissions department anymore. Things have loosened up a little bit. When grad transfers come in, their academic, they have a choice how they want to handle. Do they want to get a graduate degree, or do they want to be a football player? And that's essentially what they are allowed to do. But this place is for real, man. It's legit. The Notre Dame, the student athlete lives at Notre Dame. Pete Bavacqua just emphasized it again to us the other day. They won't give that up. They won't allow that to change, regardless what the atmosphere is nationally and what it takes. And they are still able to stay independent, live by their own rules of true student athletes, do things the right way, do things the Notre Dame way. It's why I've done what I've done for all these years. I probably wouldn't have done it for any other school. Notre Dame is not just a football team. It's not just a school. It's Notre Dame is a way of life, the way I've always considered it. I know that sounds a little sappy and dramatic, but that's just the way I look at it, man. And I've been really blessed to do what I've been doing for 44 years.
There's no better way to close it out than that. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm really looking forward to following your coverage all season long, listening on the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast, and reading everything you write on the site. It's going to be a really fun year. I hope we can do this again down the road. Thanks again.
Thanks. Really appreciate it, Tyler.
That's a wrap for my interview with Tim Prister. Thank you again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed taking a trip down memory lane in part 2, please take a second to subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow the podcast and leave a 5-star rating or review on your preferred platform. I'm going to be back right here tomorrow with another Friday mailbag, so keep those questions coming. You can drop them below in the YouTube comments or send them over on social media. The X account is @LockedOnIrish and the Instagram handle is @LockedOnIrishPod. I'll see you tomorrow.